the new Attorney General. We can only hope he will do his job. Equal justice, equal application of our laws. Big announcement. Everybody, you see that vote? Needs to calm down. It's a horrific garbage bill, as I've been telling you. They're just voting. It's already passed in the House and Senate. The House still voting on the spending package to avoid the government shutdown. Has the votes, both houses. It's passed. It'll head to the president's desk. A garbage, compromise, swamp, border security bill will make its way to the president. The bill is awful. The president knows it's awful. We're going to give you the whole behind the scenes as to what was going on, as to what relates to this new 7-month spending extension. And in moments, I'm going to explain exactly why it happened this way, and I will explain exactly how the president will get funding for the wall and what's in store for you. Has the president kept all his other promises? There is a method to this, and at the end of the day, is it better that the wall get built? More coming up. We have a monologue later in the program just on that. First, we have big breaking news. Hannity watch on the deep state. This is where we begin tonight with something that should shock and alarm every single American. And I don't care if you're liberal, conservative. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Doesn't matter. Or conservative as I am. We were right. I have been sounding the alarm in this program with a team of investigative reporters for over 2 years. And now today, more confirmation than we ever thought we'd have that we are dealing with, yes, a deep state and what is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in the history of this country. We now have disgraced, and by the way, now being investigated, fired FBI director, former deputy director Andrew McCabe, back in the news. Remember last year, the deep state Trump hater was fired for lack of candor. Well, where I grew up, that's called lying. Now, the Bureau found that he was constantly lying, not lack of candor, lying. Now, his conduct was so bad that he's now facing a criminal investigation over his actions, as are other deep state upper echelon, not rank and file in the FBI. Now, the bottom line is Andrew McCabe is a known liar, but that's not stopping CBS News from giving him a huge platform to hawk his brand new anti-Trump book. But a lot of revelations in here that should scare the living daylights out of anybody that believes in the rule of law and our Constitution. Take a look.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, our most formidable adversary on the world stage. And that was something that troubled me greatly.
Maybe, I think so. I thought when we dealt with the rule of law, we needed something called evidence. And of course, they have no evidence of collusion. Look at the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee this week. They said they have no evidence after 2 years of any collusion. Now look on your screen. Top FBI lawyer who worked for McCabe, Lisa Page. And of course, you can add James Comey and others in this upper echelon of the FBI. Lisa Page admitting, in fact, in 2016 and 17, along with Comey, that in fact, after 9 months when they investigated before the appointment of the special counsel, they had nothing. Still, McCabe has always peddled in the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, just like fake news. However, this next revelation from McCabe's interview is much, much more alarming. Take a look at this.
There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the President of the United States under the 25th Amendment. This was not perceived to be a joke. It was also said at a previous time that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, offered to wear a wire into the White House to record potentially incriminating conversations with the president. A statement was released after that was never serious, it was sarcastic, etc. McCabe, in our interview, says no. It came up more than once, and it was so serious that he took it to the lawyers at the FBI to discuss it.
All right, they have it. More confirmation. Now, understand, they didn't like, their favorite candidate was Hillary. They never liked Trump. but more evidence we have high-ranking members, the highest in the FBI and the Department of Justice, discussing how to override the will of the American people, first to influence the election, and by the way, keep a candidate that should have been charged in the race, and then remove a duly elected president from office because they didn't want him to win, and they had an insurance policy. Now, this would sound insane if it wasn't true. Now, remember months ago, we first reported this deep state conspiracy to oust the president, a silent coup. At the time, the deputy AG, Rod Rosenstein, remember, he first denied, we never talked about wearing a wire. Said it never took place. And he said, they were just merely joking when he offered to wear a wire. Then later he changed the story again, saying, well, I never actually ordered the surveillance, so all's good, right, Rod? Now, sadly, the high-level DOJ, FBI discussions to secretly surveil, remove a duly elected president from office, that's only a tiny tip of the iceberg in this abuse of power corruption scandal and what has been a years-long efforts to rig the system up and the will of the American people. That is the danger tonight. Look at this timeline. Let's start July 15, 2015. That's when the FBI opened up a criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton. Why? Mishandling top secret, classified, and special access programming information that was on a mom and pop shop bathroom closet server that they even believed was hacked by 6 foreign intelligence agencies. On May 2nd, 2016, Comey, the FBI director, and the all-important Peter Strzok, they were drafting a letter exonerating Hillary Clinton of any wrongdoing, which, by the way, Comey denied. We know it's true. It wasn't until 2 months later, in July, that Hillary and 17 others were finally interviewed by the FBI. Then only 3 days later, because they were writing the exoneration before investigation, and by the way, the person that did the investigation is Peter Strzok, well, then Comey had his big announcement. Remember, because the Attorney General at the time couldn't do it, that would be Loretta Lynch. Loretta Lynch met on the tarmac with Bill Clinton, and he cleared Hillary of all charges despite Comey for nearly 14 minutes, citing overwhelming evidence of criminal negligence and obstruction of justice, violation of the Espionage Act, felony. On top of that, then it got into, deleting subpoenaed emails, acid washing with bleach bit, then busting things up with devices, removing SIM cards. Clinton gets off scot-free. She was the favored candidate. The person that interviewed her, Peter Strzok, remember, he said Clinton deserved to win $100 million to zero. Remember, he and the exchanges with his girlfriend, Lisa Page, Trump is loathsome, attacking Trump supporters. Remember, we're all the smelly people of Walmart. He could smell us. The fix was in. She should have been charged. She got away with things no American would ever get away with. Mishandling top secret intelligence, putting it on an outside server, clearly a violation of felony of the Espionage Act, and she obstructed justice by destroying those subpoenaed emails and then everything else that we know followed. And of course, destroying the phones with a hammer. Meanwhile, in July, again, we're still in 2016, the very same month Clinton was exonerated, immediately thereafter, the people that saved her political career and kept her in the game because the fix was in, because they favored her over Donald Trump, well, those same people, Comey, Strzok, and company, they decided to open up an investigation into the Trump campaign. 1 month later, in August of 2016, Peter Strzok texting his FBI girlfriend, Lisa Page, that it was an insurance policy against Trump in the likely event Donald Trump wins. Now, the basis of the investigation appears to center around Hillary's bought and paid for dirty Russian dossier. In other words, a piece of campaign op research with funneled money through a law firm, bought and paid for by the Hillary campaign, put together by the op research group that used the lawyer's money to go, legal money, to then go ahead and hire a foreign agent. I thought they weren't supposed to be involved in elections. That's Christopher Steele. He uses phony Russian sources, with the help of a woman named Nellie Orr. Nellie just so happened to be married to the 4th highest ranking official in the DOJ, Bruce Orr. And then he's been demoted twice. In late August 2016, Bruce Orr presented the campaign op research to the top upper echelon of the FBI and the DOJ. And guess who else? Andrew McCabe and Andrew Weissman. Yeah, the pit bull of Robert Mueller. warning them that the source was tainted. Christopher Steele hated Donald Trump, and he was being paid by the Clinton campaign. She paid for it all. Nevertheless, in the summer of 2016, the FBI used the information on the dossier in an application for a FISA warrant to spy on an associate of the Trump campaign, never ever telling the FISA court in their application Hillary paid for it, and never telling the FISA court that it's unverified and never corroborated. In fact, that dossier, with some circular reporting they pushed around, based on what source? It was the bulk of the evidence used in all 4 FISA warrants and the 3 subsequent renewals. Now, the FISA court judges, well, they were never warned of the evidence. They withheld important information that Hillary paid for it, the DNC paid for it. It never was verified. None of that. James Comey, Rod Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, all of them signing off on the FISA application. Well, that would be called committing a fraud or conspiracy to commit a fraud on a court. That'd be lying. That's a felony. Well, Comey and his cohorts were in the FISA court, and you had other deep state officials before the election leaking the dossier to anyone and everyone in the lead-up, using Russian lies to influence people's votes. Wow, sounds like collusion. And then in the fall of 2016, Obama's CIA chief, John Brennan, and Comey's general counsel, James Baker, they were both accused of leaking the phony Russian lies in the dossier. And just after the election, Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, he leaked the dossier to fake news CNN and then lied about that under oath. And then on May 9th, 2017, President Trump rightly, thankfully, fires James Comey. Right after that, the disgraced former FBI director leaked private memos surrounding his conversations with the president in the hopes that it would lead to a special counsel investigation. Wow. Is this the United States of America? Take a look at this.
I asked, President tweeted on Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Oh, government information. You're not allowed to leak that. Where's that investigation? Where's the pre-dawn raid at Comey's house? And as it turns out, on May 17, 2017, it did prompt the appointment of a special counsel. Any evidence? None. How do we know? Lisa Page and so many others told us so. Rod Rosenstein, who was actively plotting a way to secretly surveil the president and put a bug on him, well, was appointed by James Comey's good friend Robert Mueller. Mueller hired a team of anti-Trump, pro-Clinton zealots to investigate the Trump campaign. Not a single Republican, including Hillary Clinton's lawyer as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. Andrew Weissman was at Hillary Clinton's election party, probably sobbing with everyone else there. Jeannie Ray, a former lawyer of the Clintons. Peter Strzok said the Clintons should win $100 million to zero. And many others made tens of thousands of dollars in donations only to Democrats, including Hillary, Barack Obama. 0 people on Mueller's staff are Republicans. 0. So while Hillary got treated to a polite interview 2 months after she had already been exonerated, well, no other individuals were ever charged. None. Trump campaign, much different treatment. Dual justice, not under the law. That's a banana republic. That's not a constitutional republic. Search warrants, perjury traps, secret surveillance, pre-dawn raids, lying to FISA courts to get warrants, dozens of heavily armed agents accompanied by armored vehicles, frogmen, amphibious vehicles. For what? Lying to Congress when we have all the Democrats on record lying to Congress. No evidence of collusion. Oh, we learned that this week from the Senate Intelligence Committee that now looked into this, Democrats and Republicans, for 2 years. Now, in fact, that's what happened. Now, today, the witch hunt rages on, all while 2 actual real examples of collusion go totally and completely ignored by the deep state. Now, we all know Hillary Clinton bought and paid for the Russian lies in the Steele dossier. Her campaign funded Christopher Steele, who hates Donald Trump, to dig up those Russian lies. You know, hookers urinating on beds in Moscow, in Donald Trump's room. False. Then they leaked the findings in order to influence the election. Russian lies leaked to the American people. And Hillary investigation, no collusion. Next real example of collusion. Remember the Uranium One deal? Hillary Clinton signed off on the idea of giving 20%, this is the foundation of America's nuclear material, uranium, to a Russian state-run company. Wow. And at the same time, Bill Clinton goes to Russia, gets 3 times his normal speaking fees, and he wants to meet with the nuclear representatives of Russia. But instead, he couldn't meet with them because he was too busy meeting with Putin himself. You can't make this up. After the deal, millions of dollars in cash make its way into the Clinton Foundation, including Ian Telfer. He's the chairman of Uranium One. Total, 9 individuals connected to Uranium One sent a combined $145 million to the Clinton Foundation over this time period between 2009 and 2013. By the way, we had a spy, William Campbell, inside of Putin's network in the Uranium One deal, and he chronicled bribery, extortion, kickbacks, and money laundering. They knew it, and they still let it happen. And during the same time frame, we know what happened with Bill Clinton. We know about meeting with Putin. We know about everything here. Then we learned from the Hill's John Solomon, the FBI uncovered a Russian bribery plot. That's when we talk about the uranium deal. Bribery, kickbacks, extortion, money laundering, yes, and a relationship and a meeting with Bill Clinton and Vladimir. Where's the Clinton collusion investigation into Uranium One? The $145 million. That's right. We don't live in a constitutional republic anymore, do we? We have a 2-tier justice system. One set of rules for Democrats and the Clintons, one set of rules, political persecution for anybody and everybody that likes Donald Trump. Pre-dawn raids, 27 people for process crimes, amphibious vehicles, frogs, artillery, full SWAT gear, armed pre-dawn raids. Why? Because Hillary was the chosen one. She's the one they saved from getting indicted. They never wanted Donald Trump to become president. They think that they know better than you, we, the people. Think about that. And they abuse their power to favor their candidate over another. They spread misinformation, Russian lies, and did not apply the law equally. No equal justice, no equal application of our laws. And they even plotted and schemed to remove a duly elected president from office because they didn't like him or want him to win. And they used Hillary's bought and paid for Russian lies as their roadmap. They wanted to screw over the will of the American people. And so far, it seems like they're getting away with it. We have a new attorney general. Hopefully that will change. My sources telling me tonight things are happening as we speak. Tonight, 3 of so many deep state actors that need to be held accountable. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Rod Rosenstein, likely all committed a conspiracy to lie to a FISA court. That's right, fraud before a court to get a warrant to deny a fellow American of their constitutional liberties. James Comey also seems to be needing an investigation for a serious crime when he intentionally leaked his FBI memos, government property, about his conversations with the president to get the special counsel. When it comes to federal abuse of power, Comey, McCabe, Strzok were all fired. Page forced to resign in shame. Bruce Orr demoted twice. All used their positions, their high positions in government, to persecute those they disagreed with politically. And don't forget about lying to the FBI. After all, that crime shouldn't only apply to American war heroes like General Flynn. After you brag about, oh, we wouldn't do this in the Obama administration, and then having Andrew McCabe say, you don't need a lawyer, when he really did need one. And don't forget about also, in all of this, the illicit leaking. Baker, Brennan, Steele, Clapper. When are they going to be held accountable? Now, over the next year, with a brand new Attorney General, William Barr, this country, we've got to decide. You want to save the United States? You want to be a constitutional republic? You want equal justice under the law? Do you want a dual justice system, or do you want America to be handed off to your kids and grandkids a banana republic? That's the choice that America is facing tonight, because a small group of very powerful, high-ranking unelected officials obviously were able to yield so much power over this country, our lives, and your decisions and your choices at the ballot box. That's what happened. That's why every American needs to be concerned. We'll get to this issue of the border and the president in a minute. Joining us now, former attorney to President Trump, John Dowd, and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. John Dowd, let's start with you. Am I wrong on anything?
Oh, you're right on the money, Sean. Right on the money. We're looking at the tip of a coup. They were trying to take this president down.
They're trying to take him down. And you said, why is Robert Mueller allowing this?
I don't know, except that I think he's part of the problem. At the beginning, he was Rosenstein. They all pulled together, and they all wanted to take the president down. There's no doubt in my mind.
Okay.
Bob Mueller broke his word to me.
Yep. Keep going.
Bob Mueller broke his word to me that he would get the job done if we gave him all the information. We gave him all the information. He found it all to be solid.
What about Comey's role specifically in all of this, Congressman?
Jim Comey, too. But right now we have two guys saying two different things. We got Rod Rosenstein and Andy McCabe saying two different things. We need both of those guys under oath in front of a committee where we can this is how our system works, where we can ask them questions and we can evaluate who's lying and who's not.
James
those
Comey,
are the two most important witnesses.
James Comey signed on to the first FISA warrant, October 2016. Awesome. James Comey went to Trump Tower in January 2017 and said it's salacious, the dossier, but it's unverified. The bulk of information was the dossier. He lied to the president-elect, or he lied to the FISA court, and didn't all of them consciously lie to the FISA court because they didn't verify it.
All true, Sean. I'm not disputing any of that. But here's what we know. Rod Rosenstein said he didn't say that he was trying to invoke the 25th Amendment, actively pursuing removing the president from office. Andy McCabe and two other people who we've deposed in the Judiciary Committee say that he did. I want those two guys in front of our committee under oath. Instead, what's Elijah Cummings doing? Elijah Cummings is bringing in Michael Cohen instead of bringing the two guys that we need to have in front of our committee.
John Dowd.
Sean, what we need is a special federal grand jury instituted by the Attorney General and appointed the toughest prosecutor he can find, and you call them all in. I'm sorry, Congressman, but the committees of the Congress have completely failed us. They haven't followed up. They only work 3 days a week. You need a grand jury running 7 days a week to pull all this down and all together. No more Inspector General, no more kicking it down the road, and you can get this thing done in no time.
All right. I'm always countries at stake. All right. A mini monologue. President, national emergency. I told you this would happen. I'll explain it all the behind the scenes coming up.
Well, for generations, everybody in America knew what the stereotypes were for the two political parties. Democrats were the party of the working class, coal miners, factory workers, your local beat cop. Republicans were the party of lawyers and doctors. They spent a lot of time at country clubs, remember? Things have changed a lot. Now Democrats have become the party of the elite professional class. They're consultants, bankers, socialites, eager to lecture you about open borders, global warming from their gated communities. Nobody knows that change better or has watched it more carefully than the author of Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance. We spoke to him recently about it. J.D. Vance, thanks for joining us. So, because you don't live in Washington and you think bigger thoughts than the rest of us who are completely consumed by this dumb news cycle, I want to ask you a broader question. The parties have realigned. They don't represent the same people they thought they represented or that they have represented for the last 70 years. I'm not sure their leaders understand this, but you do. Who do the parties represent as of right now?
Well, at a big level, the Democratic Party increasingly represents professional class elites.
Yes.
And Republicans represent middle and working class wage earners in the middle of the country. Now, I will say, I think Democratic leaders kind of get this. If you look at the big proposals from the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates, universal child care, debt-free college, even Medicare for all, which is framed as this lurch to the left, but is really just a big handout to doctors, physicians, pharmaceutical companies, and hospitals, they sort of get that they're the party of the professional class, and a lot of their policies are geared towards making life easier for professional class Americans. The problem I have is that my party, the Republican Party, hasn't quite figured out that we basically inherited a big chunk of the old FDR coalition. The middle of the country, working and middle class, blue collar folks, the sort of people who work, pay their taxes, send their kids to the military. That's increasingly the base of the Republican Party, but the Republican donor elites are actually not aligned with those folks in a lot of ways, and so there's this really big mismatch, big picture within the Republican Party.
So I'm completely fascinated by what you just said, something I've never thought of in my life, that Medicare for all is actually a sop to the professional class. That's a whole separate segment, and I hope you'll come back and, and unpack that all. But more broadly, what you're saying, I think, is that the Democratic Party understands what it is and who it represents and affirmatively represents them. Yes. They do things for their voters, but the Republican Party doesn't actually represent its own voters very well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, look at who the Democratic Party is. And look, I don't like the Democratic Party's policies. Most of the times I disagree with them. But I at least admire that they recognize who their voters are, and they actually just as raw, cynical politics do a lot of things to serve those voters. Now look at who Republican voters increasingly are. They're people who disproportionately with the president in the campaign. But the Never Trump phenomenon, I think, is primarily not about the president. It's about the people who were most excited about somebody who was anti-elitist effectively taking over the Republican Party. They recognize that Trump was, whatever his faults, a person who instinctively understood who Republicans needed to be for. And at the end of the day, I think they don't necessarily want the Republican Party to be for those folks. They don't like the policies that will come from it. They don't like necessarily the country that will come from it. And so there's a lot of vitriol directed at people who voted for Donald Trump, whether excitedly or not.
If the Republican Party has a future, it'll be organized around the ideas you just laid out, maybe led by you or someone who thinks like you. I'm serious. That's what it needs, I think. J.D. Vance, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
It is time for Final Exam. The remarkable Lauren Blanchard going tonight for her 8th win in a row. The question is, have you paid closer attention than she has to this week's news? Find out after the break.
All right, it's time right now to get your...
Shortly, but we do want to cover the breaking news as it develops, and what a night we've had already. We understand normally the procedure would be that the Senate would vote second when you have a bipartisan bill like this border budget bill to extend funding of the government until September 30th. But because of the funeral of Congressman Dingell, the House said, hey, can we vote late at night? So the Senate had their vote, and they had 83 votes for, so it passes. The House, at this very moment, as I split the screen with them, is beginning to vote. And they're going to vote for the next 15 minutes on the passage of the bill. Now, it's expected to pass as we bring in Mark Stein. Mark, the one thing I'm wondering is, being that it's become clear and we reported at the top of the hour that the president's going to take the $1.375 billion and all the provisions that are with it to build the barrier, and there's more money. There's about $49 billion in here for other things, but he's going to take that. But the being that he's getting about $8 billion total in emergency funds, national emergency funds, which he can declare constitutionally, I'm wondering if some liberals are going to defect from that. What do you think?
So the theory would be that if they think he's serious about doing it, then they would object to this bill, because he does need the starting money. He needs that additional, he needs that $1.5 billion change just so he can get going before, as we were talking about before, some district court judge in the Ninth Circuit somewhere decides to strike it down. I think what will be interesting about this is the dynamic between the Freedom Caucus, which in the House, which has felt it does not actually have any meaningful leverage on this, and the president's own inclinations. But the language of this bill, I mean, this is an appallingly written bill. As you say, it's very weird for it to be starting in the Senate because, you know, funding bills normally start in the House. There's a great sense that a lot of this is being kind of made up as it goes along. But there are things in that bill that are poorly drafted and that have huge implications. And legislators owe that to their constituents beyond anything else. All this wording that nothing in this bill or any other bills, for example. What does or any other bills mean in there? He can't ever build a wall in the Rio Grande Valley. No way, no how, not now, not never. I mean, this isn't the way republics of citizen representatives draft legislation.
Right, and we're watching this tally go right now. Nita Lowey, who is in charge of appropriations, she's chairperson, and she's the one who really was part of that led the 17-person bipartisan bicameral committee. She just spoke 5 minutes before we hopped on, just while we're in the break, Mark, and she was saying, okay, let's the voting start. It's going to be electronic, and we have right now, it looks 122 to 22, so it looks pretty overwhelming. If you missed at the top of the hour, we did speak to Mick Mulvaney, and Mick Mulvaney broke down where he's getting the additional money that the president will officially sign in an executive order in national emergency. He's getting $600 million for the Treasury Forfeiture Fund. He's getting $2.5 billion from the DoD Drug Interdiction Account, $3.5 billion from the military construction budget. Now, over the last 3 months, he's been asking people, come up with some money you think that will help, because it's all in the name of national security. But I want to go now, and this is the money and how it breaks down. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi is going to, well, it's just a matter of time before she challenges this or somebody challenges this in court. David Spun is actually on the House floor covering all this as the vote develops. It's round now 129 to 28. David, any surprises so far?
Well, hey, Brian, that's the vote total right now. The actual final number is 217. That would be the magic number, I should say. We're waiting. Once it gets to 217, then you can officially say that they have the votes needed to actually pass that bill, combine that with the Senate version, then go ahead and send it over to the White House. Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, said today she has been confident from the beginning that this was not going to be a problem. She said this was going to pass. Also, Brian, she mentioned that there may be some legal challenges if the president declares a national emergency. She said that it could cause some type of precedent issues, meaning that if a Democrat gets elected next time, they could declare a national emergency for what they feel would constitute a national emergency. So right now it's a 15-minute vote. We should know, I'm looking right now from some emails from our House producer Chad Pergram, the final tally should come somewhere around the top of the hour in about 15 minutes. And the magic number in the House is 217 as we watch those votes tally now. And then at that point, there will be a ceremony. Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, will sign it and then send it over to the White House, where you've been speaking to the Chief of Staff, and the President's team will review it before he signs it. Brian?
David, real quick, 10 seconds. Anybody say something of note in their remarks before the vote took place that our viewers should know about?
Well, we do know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is a liberal Democrat from New York. As she was walking in, somebody spoke to her off camera, and she said that she would be voting no because the actual bill gives money to Homeland Security. She said that she wants to defund ICE and parts of Homeland Security. Brian.
Right. She's definitely different. Always trying to stand out on every vote at every moment. David Spun, thanks so much. Mark Stein, thank you very much. Back in a moment, we're covering Tucker Carlson Live is covering all the breaking events in Washington. Don't move.
In American life. A few months ago, Amazon announced plans to open 2 new headquarters, one in Northern Virginia, the other in New York City. Those cities both won the sweepstakes to provide the biggest corporate giveaways to Amazon. But in New York, that plan met resistance from some locals who said the city ought to focus on helping its own residents. improving its own infrastructure rather than giving billions to the world's richest man. Apparently, those protests succeeded. Today, Amazon announced it will be canceling its planned headquarters in New York. Virginia, no such luck. They're still coming. China has risen rapidly to become the chief economic and political rival of the United States. No one in Washington recognizes that, but it's clearly true. But China is not content to be the equal of this country. China wants to be our superior. Its communist government is pursuing an initiative called Made in China 2025. It seeks to make China the dominant player in 10 advanced industries, including robotics, artificial intelligence, and aerospace. And they're getting a major assist from the United States, where many in our ruling class view outsourcing as a boon to corporate profits. What can be done to stop this? We spoke recently to Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, about it, and here's what he said. Senator Rubio, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you have said, crystally, in very clear language, China is growing at the expense of America. What does that mean?
It means they're trying to take over all the industries that are going to dominate the 21st century, and they're not out innovating us to do it. They're cheating. I mean, they're stealing our secrets. They're forcing our companies to transfer technology. They're funding their companies so their companies can go out and bid against ours, undercut us because they don't have to make a profit. The Chinese government is backing them. And then when they do it in enough places, they put us out of business, and then they control that industry. You know, for years we were told, don't worry, the Chinese are doing the lower end manufacturing stuff, but the big stuff is still being made in America. Well, now they're going for the big, they're coming for the big stuff. We're going to have nothing left.
So if you sought an advantage in trade against another country and you were able to raise their energy prices far above current market, that would give you a huge advantage, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And if you did it to yourself, as someone's suggesting, that it's a self-inflicted damage. There is going to be no new Green Deal in China. They do all the stuff where they go around the world and talk about how they're going to get carbon emissions, but they say that'll be later, by the way, once we become a rich and prosperous country. They already are. And bottom line is that it's one of the areas where the United States has been blessed with the resources to be globally competitive, and we shouldn't be surrendering that.
So why would we ever sign up for a program that in effect is unilateral disarmament against China? So we're not going to use any fossil fuels. We're going to shut down our energy sector and our nuclear sector, but China doesn't have to. Why would we ever do something like that?
Because I think there are people that think America's a planet. America's a country. The rest of these countries are going to do what they're going to do. Look, that's fine. I want the air to be cleaner. I want us to be more energy efficient. I think that you get there by allowing the innovations to get you there and other practices, which you don't get there by destroying and gutting your economy. And so ultimately, the people who are proposing that will have to defend it and why they're offering it. It's a ridiculous idea. You can see that a lot of Democrats are hiding from it, and some are just flat out saying it's crazy. Others are very proud of what they're putting out there. But bottom line is this: it is unilateral disarmament economically. It's worse than that. It's actually self-inflicted damage that we would do to ourselves if even pieces of that were implemented.
But if you really believe that carbon dioxide was a deadly pollutant destroying the earth, and you look at the numbers, and China emits twice, more than twice what the United States does,
right?
Why wouldn't you be protesting outside the Chinese embassy?
Well, again, I think these are people that think America's a planet. They think that somehow if we do it, it'll matter, that the rest of the world isn't going to sort of eat up the difference because of their rate of growth. And it's not just China, it's India and a bunch of other places. But the second thing I ask is, fine, then let's do more nuclear energy and let's shift more to natural, make it easier to access natural gas. That's much cleaner than some of the other fuels, but they're against those too. If the idea is that we're going to power this country into the 21st century with solar panels and windmills, that's not going to work. I mean, it doesn't work anywhere. So you've got to have some consistent source of revenue, and you've got to do it in a way that that doesn't destroy or gut your economy. But they're against those things as well. Nuclear energy is nearly impossible now to